How does Syracuse match up against NC State?
You are Locked On Syracuse, your daily podcast on the Syracuse Orange. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome into Locked On Syracuse. I'm Jackson Holzer, and thank you for making us your first listen of every single day here on the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day, and we are free and available wherever you get your podcasts. And on today's show, we are joined by Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House, and we are going over how Syracuse matches up against NC State. We're going to start off with attacking the NC State defense. Then we're going to go switch to the defensive side of the ball, stopping the NC State offense. And then finally, we're going to have an 8-minute session on about how Syracuse can fix their special teams, because please do not have 2 block punts against NC State. That is the number one way we can get upset in this one. Before we get to all that, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. All right, Neil, thank you so much for taking the time to hop onto the podcast today, going over NC State and how Syracuse can exploit them. So, NC State is a team that is actually pretty good in pass defense. Not so great against the run. Mm-hmm. So, Neil, as a team in Syracuse that likes to throw the ball like crazy, like they're the K-gun offense in Buffalo here, is this a game where you think that Syracuse is going to try to come out throwing like crazy, or do they try to go a little bit more ground and pound from what we've seen?
Great question. And Jackson, as always, thanks for having me on. I do agree with you, and I feel like we've chatted about this offline and maybe even on social media, that as awesome as Kyle McCord has been by and large this season, I do think 63 pass attempts last Friday against UNLV. Was it 63? I think it was 63. Is a bit too much. Now, to put that in context a little bit, Syracuse had the ball for so much longer than UNLV and ran so many more plays that, that kind of skews the numbers a bit. But, and LeQuint Allen obviously was great, but it's not like he had, a 150-yard rushing game. He had, I think, almost 130 total yards, but a lot of that was, as a receiver as well. So to answer your question, I think you're right. NC State's pass defense isn't bad at all. I think they give up around 215, 210 yards per game, which is not bad. But their run defense, I believe, gives up almost 160 yards per game. So, I think it would be definitely in Syracuse's interest to have a little bit more balance. Frankly, if I can be candid, run the ball down and the NC State's collective throat with LeQuint Allen. And, I had been saying this, even prior to the year, just, following, covering Syracuse recruiting. I've always been high on Willis. And he showed, and obviously we want Will Nexon to be healthy and back and all that, but Willis is a beast too. So that's a two-headed monster right there. So I'm not saying they're going to get away from the passing game, but a little bit more balance, I think, would behoove the team, especially because NC State is just not super great against the run.
Yeah, and I think when I say they need to run the ball more, you're going to get a lot of people that are going to roll their eyes and be like, again, they're talking about running the football when they're passing the ball at such a high rate. But here's the deal. Here are the numbers here, and here's why we're mentioning against a team like NC State. NC State is 6th in the ACC in pass yards allowed per game. That's pretty good, but you have to take a little pause for a second because they're always trailing in games, which means teams are going to run the ball against them. So I went a little bit deeper for everyone. And I was like, well, what is their pass yards allowed per attempt? Right? Maybe that's a little bit more of an indicator. And they're still upper half in the FBS. They were top 60. I don't know exactly where they rank in the ACC, but I do know that they are an upper half in the country in pass yards allowed per attempt. So they're pretty good at stopping the pass, even on all these blowouts. Having said that, their rushing defense, it's like a homecoming game for some of these running backs against them. They're going over 100 yards like it's 50 yards at this rate. If you go look at their box score and go look at their running back performances against them. So that is why we are saying, as great as they are throwing the ball, and Syracuse is putting up program record numbers passing, and it's working. It's working. Against a team like NC State, they're pretty decent at stopping the pass. I think this is a game where Syracuse, especially early, has to try to establish that run, because if they're running the ball down their throats, it's over. It's over. I cannot see Syracuse losing this game if LeQuint Allen goes over 100 yards on the ground. They cannot lose because it's going to suck everyone in. You're going to be able to throw right over the top against them. Now, we can go a little bit into the passing offense. And I talked about on yesterday's podcast about Justice Ross Simmons. He is returning really to full form, I would say, according to Fran Brown. He's played a couple of games, but he's like, where's Waldo out there? We can't find him, right? How much do you think Justice Ross Simmons is going to factor into the game plan?
Well, first of all, it's just good to have him back, and assumably at 100% or as close to 100% as feasible. I think it just adds more diversity, more options. And, I've written about this on the Loud House site, and we talk about it on social media. I think McCord has done a really solid job, strong job of spreading it around to, obviously Gadsden had a good game this past week after a couple of quiet games. But spreading around to other receivers. And so, I think Simmons, he's another option. He's a talented receiver from Colorado State, correct?
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Is he going to lead the team in receptions this week? I don't necessarily think that, but
Wouldn't that be a cool thing, though?
That would be cool. And it was nice to see Gadsden get back kind of to his form from the first two games. But it's interesting. I was, during the game, I was chatting with some folks on the Loud House Facebook page, and they're talking about Gadsden and where's he been and all that. I mean, one thing I would point out is that, coming into this season, opposing defenses probably look at him as the number one guy to target, even though he was injured for most of last year. He was, a preseason All-American candidate last year after being an All-ACC first-team performer the year before. So, he gets a lot of attention, and so that attention on him means maybe he's getting less throws to him, but it's opening other guys up. So a guy like Jackson Meeks or, Gill or Pena, obviously has been having a pretty good year. I mean, there's just other options. And so, but now with kind of Gadsden, kind of reverting back to where he was earlier in the year, that's a really important positive. And I think with Simmons is, Justice Ross Simmons as well, they just have more guys to throw to. And, I don't know, did Hatcher even he didn't have a catch last week, I don't believe.
He might have had one. I don't have the box score on my hand. He wasn't really super noticeable.
Right.
But not in a bad way or anything, but it's one of those things when I look at the weapons, it's like everyone's going to have their turn, right? One week it's going to be someone. It's like you can count on almost like one consistent player, and that is right now it's Trevor Pena. Pena on any given week is getting at least like 7 to 8 catches. Even Rondé Gadsden had a couple of weeks where, he's the number one target, but he's kind of been invisible for a couple of weeks until last week.
Right.
Everyone else, right, it's kind of like take your turn. One week it might be Darryl Gill with 70 yards. The next week it's Hatcher. And when you get a guy, I think getting a guy like Justice Ross Simmons back, I think it gives him another constant because we had high expectations for him. We thought that this guy could be possibly the number one wide receiver, but at minimum the number 2 wide receiver. Now, if he's full go, that gives you another, I think, plug him in any given week. You know what you're getting from him.
Oh,
That's
absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right. I mean, from week to week, it could be this, Jackson Meeks had 161 yards, recently, and Hatcher, I'm pretty sure because I wrote about it. I mean, he averages about, I think 18 yards per catch, which is like pretty good nationally. And obviously last week he wasn't, as much in focus, being focused on as some of the other guys, but he's still a talented guy. And they just have
field stretcher.
Yeah. And again, with, Zede Haynes out dealing with, personal matter, obviously thinking about him, wishing him well, but he certainly came into the year as another, one, along with Meeks, one of the 2 Georgia wide receiver transfers, thinking that he's going to get a lot of reps. And so he's out and hopefully he'll come back and he's okay, et cetera. But with Justice, it's just another guy to throw to. But getting back to the larger point, Kyle is having a great year and he's getting some Heisman buzz, and he's obviously among the nation leaders and total passing yards and passing yards per game and completions per game and touchdowns and all that. But But while it's like unprecedented from a Syracuse quarterback standpoint, 5 straight games with 300 plus yards, which has never happened before. And it's his first 5 games at Syracuse. But I still think larger picture against NC State or just moving forward throughout the season, there does need to be some more balance. I just was looking. I think Syracuse is averaging around 110 rushing yards per game.
Yeah, it's not.
I'd like to see that a little bit higher. And again, Kyle's going to get his passes, his yards, his touchdowns. It's all gravy. And LeQuint shows that he can just take over. I mean, that 4th down conversion that kept them in the game before they scored to tie it. Before overtime. That short 4th down where he was basically, I thought he was getting a tackle behind the line of scrimmage or short of the, first down marker. And then obviously the short run to win the game where he was, just barreled over the opponent. I mean, he's fantastic, but still, between him and Willis and hopefully when Nixon comes back, there needs to be more balance for sure.
I agree with you, except for every given week. I think it's more of matchup dependent.
Absolutely.
I think it really, to me, it depends on the matchup. That is where I have kind of softened my stance on the pass and run balance. If it's a team that can't stop the pass, then with how good it is for Syracuse right now, just throw the ball over.
Air it out, baby.
I don't care. Yeah. But against a team like NC State, a team that's pretty good against the pass, terrible against the run, we got to predicate to the team that we are playing.
Absolutely.
You've got an all ACC running back. You got Yassine Willis. You can run the ball down their throat for a little bit. The passing yards are still going to be there. You're still going to get yours, but it's matchup dependent for me. I think this is one of those weeks. Once again, LeQuint Allen goes over 100 yards on the ground. It's over. NC State's not winning this game. Game over. Book it. We're 5-1 heading into Pitt. All right. So that, I think, does it for exploiting the NC State defense. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. And Syracuse football this week is a 4.5-point favorite on the road against NC State on Saturday night, with its money line currently sitting at -194. If you like those odds in either direction, if you want to bet NC State's money line, if you think they're going to upset Syracuse, well, you can bet it all right now on FanDuel. That's FanDuel.com. Once again, we are joined by Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We are breaking down how Syracuse matches up against NC State. And then later on in the show, we're going to rant about how bad the special teams has been, but hopefully Syracuse can solve it. All right. Now stopping the NC State offense. Now, I think we can all presume that CJ Bailey, the true freshman, is going to be the starter. I mean, after what happened last week to Grayson McCall, everything seems to be okay, though. All the tests seem to be clean, which is thank goodness, because that was a very vicious hit that he took against Wake Forest. Once again, we can assume CJ Bailey most likely going to be the starter. How do you think Syracuse can get to the true freshman?
Well, I think what you just said there right at the end is an important kind of facet to this. He's a freshman, playing. Is he a true freshman or a redshirt?
True freshman.
Okay. So, and obviously they played, a handful of games now. So, and he's gotten some reps, like you said, and I think he's completing about 65% of his passes with a couple touchdowns, a couple picks. I think it's just pressuring him, rattling him, getting inside his head. Getting Fidel Diggs off the edge and getting some more sacks. He was great last week against the Rebels. NC State's offense it's okay. I think they're averaging 27, 28 points a game. They're averaging around the same number of passing yards per game as their opponents. They're giving up more rushing yards than they're getting. So, I never want to be complacent or be, too overly confident, but NC State's offense doesn't scare me a ton. I think the real thing here is that Syracuse's defense this year has had some nice moments, but has also been inconsistent. And, they are, I'm just going to look this up. They're giving up 26 points a game, which isn't great. And, it's obviously setting the edge and holding the run game down, and, the secondary doing its thing and just not committing dumb penalties and then, allowing the opponent to continue on with drives. But yeah, really just it'd be interesting to see how much pressure they actually send at Bailey, being a freshman and all that. But again, NC State isn't an overly daunting offensive unit. So I think if Syracuse, like you said, they have a nice balance on offense themselves, they presumably score points. Special teams has a little bit better day. But the defense, it's the defense. It's not like knocking my socks off, but I don't want to say it's a bad defense. They had some big stops against UNLV to keep the team in the game and ultimately win the game. And they've had some good moments throughout the year, but they are giving up a decent amount of points. So just pressure. I think really trying to establish that early and keeping the NC State home crowd at bay and scoring something early or getting a turnover. Are always great, short field positions, that sort of thing, but just really attacking this freshman quarterback.
I agree with you on that. I'll take it a step further. I think the way to beat NC State and to really exploit them on defense is to make them one-dimensional and make CJ Bailey throw that football.
Yeah.
He's been good. I complimented him on yesterday's podcast. Like, I don't think the game got any easier just because they're going to play the true freshman. Like, I think he's pretty good. He's looked good whenever I have watched him. He's completing 65% of his passes on over 100 passing attempts.
Right.
You can't sneeze at that as a true freshman. I kind of compared it to the UNLV situation when they had their backup quarterback in. Like, the game didn't get any
Right.
easier, right? This is not a scrub in CJ Bailey.
No.
But if you can shut down their run game, I like Syracuse's chances of winning this game if you make CJ Bailey throw the ball 40 to 50 times. If you make him throw the ball 40 to 50 times and you know what? They beat us. You know what you do?
You hand it to him.
Come on here. I'll get a cap and I'll tip it to him. Congratulations.
Yeah.
You did it, right? It's like, don't make what makes them good beat them in a sense, almost like that.
Yeah.
It's like if I'm sorry, I'm going to have to bring up this play that we all remember, but that 4th and 8 play or 4th and 9 against Stanford at the end. If someone else converts that other than Alec Iomanner, so be it. All right. The tight end got open over the middle of the field. The other wide receiver got open over the, like, whatever it is. It was just like, you couldn't, that's the one guy.
I know. No.
So with CJ Bailey, if you make him throw the ball 40 to 50 times, you make this team go one-dimensional. I like Syracuse's chances in this one. Also because, look, we're getting Marcellus Barnes back in the secondary.
Yes.
That's going to be big. That's huge. Less pressure on Clarence Lewis now as the number one corner.
Right.
They got some dudes on the outside.
Yeah.
Kevin Casey Concepcion, he's pretty good. I think he leads the country in catches right now. He's got 37 of them in 6 games. He doesn't have many yards. Very, very weird, his stats right now.
Right.
Very, very weird. He's got a lot of catches. And Justin Jolie, the tight end, is like a breakout for them. He's exceptional. You stop their run game.
Yeah, I agree. And Bailey, I was just looking it up. He obviously played a lot against, and they lost at home to Wake Forest, but he completed 2/3 of his passes. He had 270 yards, 2 touchdowns, one interception. But I agree with you. If he's throwing, 40 plus times, hopefully our secondary is just, locked in and maybe picks him off a couple times, or, I agree. Make him one-dimensional. It's a great point. It'd be interesting to see, how much they blitz, a freshman quarterback and kind of how he reacts to it.
Yeah, please don't rush 3 drop 8. I know it worked that one time against UNLV. It did work. I'll grant Elijah Robinson that it worked one time in overtime against UNLV. It worked. I think the issue is what I've noticed is that they are moving oftentimes Fidel Diggs to a linebacker because of Marlo Wax being out. I think at times you need to turn him loose and you just need to let him go on 3rd down. Instead of rushing 3 and dropping 8, how about rush 4, drop 7, right? And have Fidel Diggs coming off the edge.
Mm-hmm.
I think that is a great way to unlock the pass rush. A lot of people, including myself, think that King Joseph Edwards deserves a little bit more playing time. I'm not saying make him an every down player.
Right.
That's not what I'm saying here. But he's a pass rusher. And up until last week, he led the team in sacks with 1 quarter of play. I know it was a total cost, but nobody else was getting sacks.
Yeah, no, so, he had a great, 3 sacks. Yeah, absolutely. And, obviously, you got McDonald in there at linebacker, and Barron's been playing more at linebacker as well.
Yes.
So, yeah, I agree with your points, but yeah, let Diggs run loose and get the king, as I like to call him. He's such a cool dude. Get him some reps. Absolutely.
Yes. Furthering reinforcing my point, NC State's not good at running the ball. They're not. So they're bottom 5 in the ACC in rushing per game, and they're bottom 5 in yards per carry. This is not a good running team. So,
but they're averaging more yards per game on the ground than Syracuse.
I know, and it's a very confusing. Well, that's really because I actually have the stat. Syracuse has thrown the ball more times per game than any team in the country. It's 48 times a game. That is an obscene amount. So, of course, you're not going to lead the ACC in rushing. It's just not, the yards per carry is not great either, but again, they're getting sacked too.
Yeah, and I just look, both Syracuse, and you're right, the numbers are a little skewed based on how many times they throw it and all that jazz, but both Syracuse and NC State are averaging fewer than 4 yards per rush. So neither has been, tremendously great. Although, like I said, Allen obviously had a great last game, but it wasn't all on the ground. He's a terrific receiver. Oh, yeah. He showed that last year. So, they're not going to be top 3 in the ACC in rushing, but they need that. They need to hold on to that more just to keep other teams, just keep them guessing, just not, so they're not just dropping their whole team back and rushing 3 guys. So yeah, we'll see. Yeah. What do you think the magic number is for number of rushing yards Syracuse needs to win? Is it $150?
I don't know how many they need to win. I know that if LeQuint Allen gets 100 rushing yards in this game, they won't lose.
You think they'll be good? Yeah.
Oh, good. I can't see him losing if they get 100 yards from LeQuint Allen. Rushing, not total.
Right.
Rushing. Yeah. Look, I know it's probably going to be clipped and everything like that if Syracuse loses and LeQuint Allen has 175 yards rushing, but I'm honestly okay with that. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with being on freezing cold takes for everyone to see, because I said that if LeQuint Allen has a monster game rushing the football, they'll win, and they still lose.
Well, there must be other factors at play.
And something else went wrong, and maybe it's what we're about to talk about, which is the special teams are a huge problem. I love going to live sporting events, and it honestly doesn't really matter what the sport is, because I just love the energy in the building, and the way I get tickets for games is by using Game Time. Game Time is a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for your favorite live events even easier. And Game Time Picks, it filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. And my favorite feature is the curated deals. Curation makes it easier to save more on sports, concerts, comedy, theater, etc. So take the guesswork out of buying any sort of tickets you want with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCollege, LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Once again, we are joined by Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. We're breaking down Syracuse and NC State. We talked about how Syracuse on offense can exploit the Wolfpack by, running the football, because NC State doesn't do a good job against the run. Then we talked about stopping NC State, getting pressure on CJ Bailey, their true freshman quarterback, and also making them one-dimensional. Now, this isn't really an NC State note. This is purely, we're going to talk for 8 or so minutes, maybe, about how Syracuse can fix the special teams, because they haven't been good. And I'm putting it very nicely that they have not been good. Man, it's been bad. That was maybe the only reason why that game was close against UNLV. So, Neil, forget about the problems. We know the problems: the block punts, the missed field goals, the poor kick returns. How do you think Syracuse fixes this special teams?
Well, I can't give you an answer because then I'd expect Fran Brown to hire me as the assistant special teams guy. No, it's
All hands on deck, honestly.
yeah, it's tough. It's like I said, when I'm doing stuff on social media during games, obviously the special teams from the punting standpoint, struggled this past, and everyone's entitled to their opinion, and people are frustrated, but so and so needs to go, and this and that, and I don't know. The special teams has been inconsistent. I'm trying to be civil here, but the kicking game was obviously not good against Holy Cross. It didn't ultimately matter per se.
But against I don't think anything really mustered up against Stanford that I remember. But Georgia Tech, the special teams weren't good either.
Yeah,
Field goal, block punt, and a missed onside kick.
I mean, against UNLV, obviously they hit a short field goal and they made all 5 of their extra 5. I think it was 5. But then the punt, it's just it's a lack of consistency. I really don't have the answer, but I think it comes down, and Fran Brown is big on discipline. He's big on accountability. He owned up to it yesterday, I think, during his press conference. I mean, he's
owned up to it, I think, multiple times.
I mean, that's why I love the guy. He's very transparent. He's very honest. He's very upfront. He's very candid. He demands a lot. But again, it comes down to fundamentals. I mean, with a lot of it, I mean, Stonehouse, I don't remember his stats from last year, but I feel like his punting average was
an all-conference punter.
Yeah, it was pretty good. So they had 2 against, gaffes against UNLV. The second one, was that really his fault, or was that
none of them were actually on Stonehouse? What I will say, specifically about the block punts, is that it really all comes down to communication.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, this isn't just it's on almost the whole unit, because they're all doing essentially the wrong thing. You look at both those block punts by UNLV, and both of those times, it wasn't one player that was getting in. It wasn't this player missed an assignment.
Mm-hmm.
It was this player missed an assignment, that player missed an assignment, that one missed it too, that one. It was like 3-4 guys were right there in front of Stonehouse. Like, hello? Like, this isn't that guy needs to not play anymore on special teams. You can't just be like, you know what? You got to substitute this guy. That is not the solution. It's the whole unit. When you have 3-4 guys coming in on your punter and they're unblocked,
that's a problem.
That's not a substitute. No, that is the whole unit.
Mm-hmm.
That is why I think I would say, like, listen, I'm not going to sit here and advocate for people to lose their jobs or anything like that. But objectively speaking, with the special teams and how they have done so far, 2 block punts, if they had lost to UNLV,
that would have been,
I think our tone would be a lot different than it is right now.
Right.
Because we would be sitting here saying, my goodness, Syracuse is 4-1 if they don't let up 2 block punts. If UNLV goes down the field, they score 2 touchdowns, hats off to them. Our defense just isn't very good. Fine. But you didn't even give them an opportunity. Those are 2. One punt was so bad it wasn't actually blocked, and it led to a touchdown on the next play because it's 1st and goal, go to goal. I don't put that on the defense. And the second one was actually a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, that's 14 free points.
So it again, I mean, I'm a Jets fan. I just saw Robert Saleh get fired. So
what's the Jets? Not to go off topic, but I did see the news alert. What's the Jets? What is their record?
2-3. And you know what?
2-3.
Here's the crazy part. Good. Here's the crazy part. We can relate this back to Syracuse, right? The Jets are 2-3 right now. Mm-hmm. They're a 50-yard field goal, and Aaron Rodgers missing a wide open touchdown to Garrett Wilson to being 4-1.
Yeah,
a bounce here, bounce there. Yes. But you have to look at the totality sometimes. And Syracuse, bounce here, bounce there. They're 3-2 instead of 4-1. And we're primarily blaming the special teams on that loss. I think it comes down to communication.
Mm-hmm.
The unit just has to communicate better. And it's not something that I think is overly difficult to fix, but it's something that we're going to constantly monitor now because they have let up 3 block punts in 5 games.
Oh, without question. It's I communicate. I mean, that's a great point, Jackson. I agree with you. It's like on offense or defense, or if we're talking about basketball, it's about, just communication on either end of the floor. I mean, yeah, absolutely. And I do agree. It's, special teams, I don't want it to be Syracuse's Achilles heel this year, because I really feel like with the offense, the way it hums along, and the defense, if, it can get a little more consistent, this is a team in a fairly wide open ACC, I think still, that can win a bunch of games. But you're right. If you're giving away multiple touchdowns off things that can be, and stuff happens, we all know that. And you're right. They could be 3-2. They could be 5-0 right now.
They could. They're also a play away from being 5-0.
Yeah. So
that's how it works sometimes.
They got to clean that up. And I'll tell you, with the kicking game, even though they made all their extra points, and I think it a 21-yard field goal.
Yeah, they changed kickers. It's now Jaden O instead of Denver.
No, and so
that is a move
he didn't
that
miss.
I
but my and this isn't like my concern, and it's not just directed at him. It's just kind of like bigger picture. But could that be something that is a concern? In a tight game down the stretch, where they're, it's one thing to try a 21 or a 25 yarder, but ones if they're down 3 or they're tied right at the end and it's a 45 yard. Like, I don't personally know, Fran Brown's confidence level in either of his, kickers in terms of those longer field goals. But when they're playing a bunch of games still on the road, and they're playing some solid teams, and is that going to be a factor? So, I mean, it's the kicking and that sort of thing. It's obviously the punting unit. But yeah, you're right. It's something we're going to be looking at. I mean, and I don't think that's unfair. And you and I both love our alma mater, but that's just where we are.
You know what most of the time I do on punts? You know what I do most of the time on punts? This is what they're taking away from me, okay? Normally, on the punt, I'm getting a head start on notes. I'm taking notes about what happened on the drive and everything like that. Because
no more.
Now I'm like intently looking, like full eyes, like no blinking, like
it's under.
Got it. But and with regarding the field goals, are you asking me, or do I trust that either Denneberg or O is going to hit a pressure cooker field goal at the end of the game from further out? Well, we're not going to know until that time comes.
Sure.
So
sure. If
you had to put me on a lie detector test, the answer I would give you is no. I don't trust them right now. But you know what? We might not have a choice. If they're down by 1 point and it's 4th and 8 with 5 seconds to go, and it's a 45-yard field goal,
they're not going to.
You got to kick the field goal. You don't have a choice whether you trust them or you don't trust them.
Right.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter whether you trust them or not, because
that's the play.
That's the play.
That's the play.
You're going to have to kick it.
Yeah.
I will say I trust O more than I do Denneberg, because even when Jaden O, he missed that field goal against Holy Cross, and it was like a 41-yarder. It's in the dome. I get it. Like, you shouldn't miss it anyway. But it was a quote unquote acceptable miss because you could see that he hit the ball well.
Yeah.
He hit it well, and he just missed the upright.
Sure.
All right, fine. If you're gonna miss pretty, because
not
when
like
Denneberg was missing his kicks, I mean, again, that's not on special teams, coach. When your kicker from 21 yards is hitting a bullet line drive right at the defensive lineman's getting blocked, that's not on the special teams, coach. That's on the kicker for not executing.
You got
shanking a 40-yarder against Holy Cross that's not special teams coaching. That's a kicker not executing.
Right. Exactly.
So they made the adjustment. They're going with Jaden O. I trust him more than I do Denneberg. If you're asking me right now, do I trust him to hit a 45-yard field goal down by 1 against NC State with 10 seconds left? No, but I don't think we're going to have a choice. So who cares? And hey, maybe I'm wrong and he does hit the field goal and we're all happy.
Or maybe it doesn't come down to that because they're
how about not let it come down to that?
Yeah.
Let's do something in advance. Let's do something to not let it come down to a game-winning field goal.
Mm-hmm.
Neil, thank you so much for taking the time. Before I let you go, do you have a score prediction for this game on Saturday?
So I wrote something, that comes out during the week, and I'm pretty sure I had it at Syracuse 35-24.
All right. That is Neil Adler's prediction right there. Syracuse 35, NC State 24. You're going to have to wait for mine, though. That's going to come out on Friday. So, folks, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you all so much for listening. If you like this video, click that like button. And if you really liked it, subscribe to the channel, turn on those notifications so you know right away when I am dropping the next podcast. Once again, that is Neil Adler from Inside the Loud House. And everyone, take care.